Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Welcome back to part 2 of our podcast here with Mr. Jeff Yantz and his Americana music that he's brought all the way from the One Trick Ponies in his early days through the 90s up to now with his solo career. He's going to give us a little insight on his One Trick Ponies albums, as well as getting us into the future here, into what he's doing now, including the last batch of solo records that he's been releasing. We hope you've been enjoying it, and welcome back to Season 2. Without further ado, Mr. Jeff Yantz. And then 2 albums later, you did All Alone Together was the next one. That was on Bullfrog with Chad.
Yes.
Recorded at his house.
Yep.
And that is at 99, 98?
That was 96. It was actually right after.
Right after.
Yeah, it was right after. It was like the next year. Yeah.
And that's when some electric guitars got introduced.
Yep, a little bit. Somebody got some money for an electric.
Now,
Or we actually borrowed some of Chad's guitars because it was Chad Cunningham's studio. So yeah, that was.
And now, is that around the same time that Andy Reid was in the Haskells? Is that the same era?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we would split some. The nice thing about playing with them is, they realized that, we couldn't be pigeonholed. They're like, yeah, just whatever freaky thing you're doing, let's do it together. And yeah, we played some shows, which that was a hoot. A lot of fun.
Too cool.
Yeah.
Good timing.
Yes.
What an era. And Landmark wrapped up your Ponies run.
Yeah.
For at least for now.
2003. Yeah.
I did a little Mando track on that. That was one of my first recording things. But your albums got more in depth writing wise from both of you guys.
Yeah.
And the band became more muscular as the sound came on. And it's only progressed from there. What are your feelings on Landmark looking back on it right now? That was 90.
No,
that was 2000?
2003.
2003. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason why was we were both married.
It's almost 20 years old.
Yeah.
Damn.
I never thought of that. Yeah. So and the reason why we know, the Landmark, it's kind of funny we called it Landmark because it's a state theater that's on the cover or whatever, but it's, we did the release for that and, fortunately or unfortunately, they were in the process of having their baby, Max, who just graduated high school. Congratulations, Max.
Awesome.
And then we were, at the end of the year, Aaron was due for Ella, who's, she's a junior right now.
She graduates next year.
And so, next year. And so it was kind of a landmark where we were like, oh, this, our lives are changing a bit, And so, but we wanted, we really wanted to put it out. We almost kind of knew we weren't going to be able to really
amazing.
Support it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We did some, but we realized too, young family, we wanted to be there, and so it just made it made sense, and it was it was a good move.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a release show at the State Theater.
Yeah.
Who was it? Who did we have? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Local guys.
Kerry Ewing? Was he in it? He taped it or something, didn't he?
Yep. And then we had, I'm trying to think of the warm-up, who played before us. It was Chris Shannon's band.
Oh,
Swaggering Rogues.
Yeah. They were on the tape. Oh, that was a cool thing. And we videotaped that.
Yep.
That was cool. And we got halfway decent tape on it.
Cool.
So any plans for a possible reunion? Have you talked about that at all?
Yeah, Ted and I,
20 years coming up, that would be a pretty good time to do it.
Yeah, we like doing, we like the controversy. So, I'm like, Ted, this year, I think you're going to have a heroin problem, and we'll just post about that and try and keep things going. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, we were talking, and we have, we get together periodically. I was down in Detroit a couple weeks ago, and I just stopped by the house, and he's just like, let's go downstairs. I'm like, okay. So, and I was coming to say hi to the family, and I think like 3.5 hours later,
you emerged
all sweaty from the basement. Yeah. And, and then, his wife approved. She's like, wow, I haven't heard those songs in a long time. So it was fun. We had a good time. But
you had a little reunion a year ago, rehearsing for that Mitten Fest, right?
Yes, we were gonna play. Yeah, we were gonna play. Yep, we were gonna play that, and if that's comes to fruition again, we're gonna, I would assume we'd try to do that again because that's a cool, it's a cool event.
We talked about the Masonic Temple on the couple shows here, and how that's a throwback, but at the same time so essential to the arts of Michigan alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
it's a beautiful venue.
Yeah.
It is cool. I mean, it's cool to be able to do, where we get it set up where it's 4 stages and you can kind of keep things going. Obviously, with the, pandemic thing, it didn't make sense because we want people mingling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want that. So it's one of those where, like, we're going to hold off for a year. But yeah, we rehearsed with Scotty. I think it was last January. And man, we had a hoot. It was fun.
So Scott Cusley's playing with you?
No, his name's Scott Moore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where does Scott live? Au Gres?
He's in Petoskey.
Petoskey.
Yeah, so he's up there. And then so he played drums for us. And then strangely enough, they had triplets. So it's amazing how, like, demise of some of the band here, is are good things. But they had triplets, and I always joked because I remember we were playing a gig and his wife's pregnant and kind of going through that, and we're kind of talking to him like, there's having a baby and then there's having triplets, And he just, I don't think he's a wonderful dad, great kids, but at the time he's like, no, I'll still be able to play. Wherever we're like, no, we're not even going to ask you, man.
Wow.
So it was cool. And he was, he's kind of, jazz trained. And he really fit in, to our sound. We had another percussionist before him, briefly, and I think Steve Levinson was his name. And then, but Scott really came, and the craziest thing about it, he was a neighbor on Midland Street too. Mm-hmm. He lived in those same apartments.
You had background singers too. Right?
And
Carrie?
Carrie Seven or Carrie Lesser.
Yeah.
Dad's attorney in town, Bill. And, and so, she sang, she would sing with us, and it was a cool, it was a cool setup having the support of Scott and Steve and Carrie.
What a reunion. Even the all our Mitten Above Mary's release party about 4 or 5 years ago for the remaster.
Yeah.
Get to see all you guys again.
Yeah.
And then you guys reunited last year in your basement.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you said Ted's boy just graduated.
Yes.
And then your girl's graduating next year.
Yes, Ella. Yep.
So I know Jeff Yantz has had quite the solo career over the last 20 years. A pretty good solo career going for yourself, where you've really built your name. Do you see any One Trick Ponies records or music being made down the road? Because the schedules are opening up all of a sudden again.
I don't. It's crazier things have happened. I think that same reason that, in 2003 we're, focus on family and do those kind of things. I think along those same lines are, kids are, kids are grown and those kind of things where, yeah, possibly it opens up. I know I do solo stuff, but Ted's there. I mean, he's my listening ears when I've got an idea. There's a lot. I mean, lots of my ideas kind of go and I filter through Ted still.
Yeah.
And there was a time where he writes. I think he writes a lot. He doesn't share. He doesn't share near as much as I know he's writing. But he I think there was a time where he wasn't interested in the writing and actually not really interested in music. What I think's great is he got that passion. I would say probably about 3 years ago, and back. And he plays. He's got his own little Instagram thing where he's doing and he loves the idea of playing live, and he's just he's having a ball. He's got his own thing, man. Yeah. I mean,
I remember you and I did an acoustic show at Chris Fleesick 10 years ago. 12 years ago.
Brewtopia.
Ted came to that one, and he had that snarl and that shoulder shuffle, like, whatever. Yeah. Hey, guys, good to see you guys. Kind of, yeah. I don't really care. I'm not getting up there, not worried about it. He jammed or whatever, but he wasn't. Yeah. He was like, I don't care. Then I see him post on Instagram like 4 or 5 years ago. He's doing that replacements thing in Ann Arbor or whatever, or Ypsilanti.
I went to that.
And I'm like, he's back.
Oh, yeah.
Look out, Jeff. Here he comes.
Oh, yeah. No, it was funny.
You see his inspiration was starting to come
and
back.
And that was neat. It was like a one-night festival of replacements in Ypsilanti. I can't think of the name of the place in Ypsi, but it was it's a bar. It was great set up. And it was one of those things where I'm I'm at home and I'm sitting, and it was like, Erin looks at me and she's like, "What's with you?" And I'm like, "Ted's playing tonight," and she's like, "Well, go." And I'm like, well, by the time I get down, and then I didn't even finish that statement. I just grabbed my shoes and I'm like, I'm going. And I did get to see the band before him, and then I got to see the band that was after them. And the crazy thing is, I mean, with his style and his voice, and with that Westerbergian, I mean, he just nails it. And it's like the band before, I'm like, oh, they're good, all right, and then Ted nailed it, and they nailed it as just a 3-piece. And
awesome.
And then hearing the people after, I'm like, once again, music good, but I'm like, nope, he had this style, it was just great, and so it was fun.
It's refreshing.
It was cool to see people they're kind of on, over him after. They're like, man, you nailed. I was like, and he's just doing the same shrug that you said. Yeah.
Ted's like,
so that was just a one-shot deal for him.
Yeah, he's got some buddies together, and they just
I would think that would be pretty popular, to go out and do replacement songs.
Yeah. I remember he promoted it maybe a month before that, and I'm like, oh man, I got to remember to get that. And by the time I saw it, because I spend more time on the other social media, but my Instagram's periodic, and I get on there and it was already done. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to call Jeff to see if he was going down. I didn't even know he went down till soon after that, but it was like, oh man, I'm glad you got to catch that show.
Oh yeah. And he's done, I think in the last couple of years, he's done he's like, he'll sneak out in Detroit and do a quick little set and
good.
Just get back into it and see.
I know he's tuned into the scene again, because he hits me up on Instagram. I'm like, hey man, some of your new album, some of this, or some of what you're working on.
Well, he loved the idea of the podcast. We were talking, and when you guys had started this, and he's just like, what an awesome idea. He said it's such a rich,
that's cool
environment, and so much you can pull from. And so he's a fan. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I went to the Electric Kitchen. Jordan Priest said, how come nobody's ever done a podcast on this? He says, our state alone. He says, that is the most genius thing that you can do. Yep. He's like, I'm so happy for this podcast. And I'm like, that's the kind of vibe we're getting. I mean, and I'm seeing our hits for this show, they're around the world that are tagging onto it.
Absolutely.
So it's cool.
You guys hit it's really cool.
But Jeff, your solo career from 2002 to 2003, it started out slowly, started going back on. I know I was getting my fire rolling, and I grabbed you for some shows to pull you back out. Next thing you know, you're out.
There's more to that than, because Ella was born in 2003, so I took 5 years off.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I took 5 years off.
That doesn't seem like that.
It was kind of two reasons. I I was kind of brought up saying, hey, the first 5 years of a kid's life is pretty darn important to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And and then there was a Wilco album named Being There. So I mean, all these messages right in my head saying maybe I should be here.
Oh.
And so I decided that was a good thing. The other, which was probably even more pertinent, was being a harmonica player. My kid hated the sound of the harmonica the first 3-4 years of life, so I didn't even touch that instrument, And I would hum and strum around her and those kind of things a little bit, but I just wanted to, I really didn't know if I wanted to get back into it or not. I was, I wouldn't say I was content, but I just didn't know what what my direction was. And I mean, and that's when, you invited me out to play a coffee shop when we started playing those coffee shops. Remember the Harvest?
Yeah. We did the John Hyatt pizza tape type things, Brooklyn Boys, when I had that regular
I
thing.
still have those recordings. Yeah, we did those. Yeah, we did like 2 locations.
We were just inspired by those old acoustic things we were digging out of the bootleg era, and you said, man. And all of a sudden you started popping in on my shows. I'm like, if you're coming to them, you're going to play them.
Yeah. And I was like, no, you drag. And I was like, hey, he's dragging. I was like, he doesn't have to drag me too far. But it was fun. It was great.
We had some good times.
Yeah, that was good.
But was good. What was your first solo record? I know you got 3 now that are full length and 2 EPs, or is it 2?
No, mostly EP. Yeah, it's only. I mean, it's Dance in the Rain. So that was the first one. That was 2011.
Okay.
And that was, I mean, basically EP. So
that was an EP. I don't remember that being okay. Yeah. I thought you had a full length.
Yep, full length was that's the All of It.
Okay.
So and that one was that one I mostly tracked it at my studio. The first one was with Andy. Andy Reid at Reid Recording, and and I say that, but I'm the worst at, if it's just going straight into a studio, like with a blank slate, I don't know if I could, if I'm not coming in with a groove or a vibe or something on tape or some, now obviously a file or whatever to build off of. I just, it's weird.
Yeah.
I can play in front of humans and I'm like, well, they can understand I'm a human or whatever, but something about where it's a blank slate and you're sitting in a studio.
You're your own creative unit and you create in your basement on your time.
Yeah.
And when that comes out, then there's something to polish in the end.
Yeah.
But until that happens, you're not one of those guys that can walk in the studio on studio time and say, all right, let's write a record.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, that's just kind of how I work. And then the great thing, I mean, working with Andy, the great thing about that was he picked right up on that and he's like, okay, compliment it this way. Or, I mean, like, one of the songs on that, was Mr. Happy. And he's like,
was that Dancing in the Rain or the other one?
Yeah. Dance in the Rain. Yeah. Dance in the Rain had, Mr. Happy was on that. And that's where, I mean, he's like, he goes, how about a Hofner bass line? And I'm like, Andy Reid, a Beatles bass line? Sounds good to me, man. Yeah. So, so it was a lot of fun, putting that together. But it's neat to be able to bring ideas, to him. And
a different aspect for him, too, because he had been recording full-on projects at the time. And you and I were some of the first people to bring him kind of pre-recorded stuff to start doing mixes and final work on. At that time period.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think for me, because Mr. Happy took over the Delta radio waves, hitting NPR there.
Yeah.
And it was like, the buzz was on. And I'm like, I never realized how important the public radio was for our original scene around here until I heard Mr. Happy really start tagging on every show. Everybody's promoting it. Facebook was just blowing up at the time.
Yeah,
that got sent around everywhere, and then you get to be known on the street as Mr. Happy after that.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I'm like, I could have a worse nickname. Yeah, I guess. Right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'm like, that kind of works. And
now, when you guys were doing the Ponies, did you ever think about radio at the time? Because how would that have fit, and how would you have gone about that that sound in that era?
Yeah, we did. We were actually on the eclectic chair. His name was Mark Domzik. Mark in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And so Mark kind of, I think he started the show at Delta, and I don't know if Mark was a lawyer in Saginaw. I think he worked in the legal profession somewhere. huge music fan, sweetheart of a guy.
You remember that show, Gary?
No.
And
I don't remember it either. I remember the Eclectic Chair, but that was with Trish down the line, right?
Yes. And so she basically, reignited that show.
Oh, okay.
Is what she did. And I think she knew Mark as well. I can't remember that whole thing. But that's what was so neat to work with Trish, was knowing that we had started with. So we did live stuff in the studio with with Mark.
Ooh, that'd be cool to find those tapes.
And so we have them. So we basically, it was like Scott drummer, okay, go in the corner here. Mark was just pointing to us, and we were like, okay, we were like dogs, sit, and then okay, play. And it was amazing how he mixed. He mixed it on the fly, and it was a fun, it was really fun. But it was really neat because he was super respectful for us being kind of the artists, that we wanted to be.
So you guys started the NPR local college radio station thing, which was basically all
95
people had left, coming out of the alternative era, which was heading into the the Britney Spears era.
Yep.
And it's like everybody lost their ability to have local radio play unless there was some Sunday night half-hour show on a metal channel or something.
We also did One Trick Pony. We did some KQZ spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we did like some Sunday night shows for them, and it would be more along the lines of they wanted more in studio. I
did one with Muddy Gumbo back.
Yeah, I can't remember who the guy was, but I thought it was funny because he's like, well, just come into the studio because he goes, your live stuff's not going to sound much different than the recording. And I'm like,
okay,
you're somewhat right, man. It's when you only have 2 microphones when you're recording, and 2 cheap guitars, it's not going to be much different.
So Trish popped her show out like what, 2012, 2009, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
and that's you as a solo artist by that point.
Yeah,
you got to reignite it, like you said.
Yeah,
Mr. Happy started breaking. Mr. Happy was on multiple shows.
Yeah.
And then the internet obviously started spinning that around.
Yep.
And,
I sent that. I just kind of sent that all over. Figured, well, let's see what the heck.
It's a tag that people grab. Like raindrops keep falling on my head kind of thing. It's like people know it because it is what it is. I think nobody at that point had recorded a tune like that. And you have your own unique delivery, which is the coolest part of how you've developed throughout the years. Is you became yourself within that song.
Yeah.
At least I noticed that. Like, wow, all these technical writing and this wonderful stuff, and however it came out, but you've really opened up to be free. I think you freed yourself with that.
Yeah, I realized. I always say skiffle, but it's one of those things where take what I have and work with it and see what I can do with it. I don't know if I push the limitations as much as just go, what are the limit? What do I have to work with, and how can I make that cool? The crazy thing about that song was, it's a ukulele. There's no guitar in it. It's a ukulele, and the only reason I had a ukulele was I got a ukulele for Father's Day from my wife and my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I didn't ask for a ukulele. It was just a gift, and it was one of those where I'm like, I don't even know how this thing works, And so the really funny thing about that is I was recovering. I had a surgery. I was recovering from a surgery, and I had the ukulele, and I didn't have it. I didn't even have it tuned properly, so it's an alternative tuning.
Joni Mitchell ukulele there.
And I didn't even know it was cool, but I was cool at the time. Yeah. So Mr. Happy's cooler than we thought. So so it was, and that's where and I was just writing it off tone because I didn't know the instrument yet. And that's when, I realized that exploring a new instrument is just an amazing gift. And it's fun, and it's always inspiring. I just did another song. It was a mandolin. There's no way I should have a mandolin in my hand, but gosh darn it, I wrote a song. It's like. Did
you know that George Harrison was a big fan of the ukulele?
Yeah,
How about
actually,
that?
Yeah, and his son, he just did the signature, right?
Yeah.
The signature uke.
It just got announced a week ago.
Yeah, and that's actually really close to the tenor ukulele that I play, and I mean it's such a cool instrument. It's a fun instrument, and I keep telling James, I'm like we're maybe this summer we'll work in a full ukulele set.
The comeback of Mr. Happy.
Yeah, I guess George Harrison, that was the big thing. When friends would come over, they'd hand out the ukuleles. And,
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the Wilbury documentary. Dylan even said he'd hand me a ukulele. I was like, okay, what are you gonna do? Then Petty come over. He goes, what do you got? He goes, I got a trunk full of ukes for you and your family. Okay, so they pull them out of George's trunk and pass them out as gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that George Harrison's going to put out a massive box set of All Things Must Pass.
Did you see the price for that? They got announced this morning.
Sure, it's shuddering.
The very first, the deluxe super edition, it just got announced this morning. $1,000. It's got a gardening book in it too.
Well, he was quite a gardener,
which is pretty cool.
Wow. But how much did the Lennon one go for Plastic Ono Band?
That you can get for $3 something, I think.
Oh, well, that's a little more reasonable.
Gosh.
But being that's my all-time favorite album, I've been looking forward to this forever, and tears flooded my work desk this morning because I'm not going to be able to buy the $1,000.
That's tough. Yeah. Hey, we're going to go over a second mortgage.
I flew it over to AJ Dunning, Verve guitar player, because I call him my All Things Must Pass brother. We always send each other stuff or talk about it.
Yeah.
And he goes, a little steep, you think?
Yeah. They have to form a little corporation, and everybody invests, and they get to have it for, a month at a time.
It'd be like the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's right.
It's funny.
Just kind of pass it around.
I told him, I says, you tell me what you're going to buy so I know what we need to fill the gaps with.
Right.
And he gave me a thumbs up.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
oh, man.
Right. That's crazy.
Oh, that is crazy.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
So, Jeff, your latest thing has been putting a lot of video footage into singles.
Yeah.
And video has become a really big thing in our area. Give me a little background on how that was. It just a step into that pool, or
it's ironic I'm doing that because one of my EPs was called Face for Radio. So you would think a guy that has good face for radio shouldn't be doing video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I grew up in the MTV when I grew up, it was music videos. That they actually did have music videos there, kids.
Yeah.
And I think growing up with that and seeing it, I think to think about, to have a band that would shoot a video, would blow our minds,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I kind of told you what Ted and I's budget were, with starting out with so video had nothing to do with it. The technology wasn't there at the time, lots of reasons. And I think, the more, I think it's, like I said, listeners there's so much out there for people to listen to, and there's so many choices now. And I think that's a more sophisticated listener, but then also it's kind of soundbite as well. So it's almost both ends of the spectrum. And so I think the video part of it is I think there's, I think we have a generation of listeners that they're watch listeners.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
clickbait.
Clickbait. There you go. And so, working with some really talented folks locally, that offered. One of the cool things that came out of the pandemic is, some of them were just bored out of their gourd during pandemic, and so Jeff Hildebrandt I gave him, he's like, you got anything? Almost during the pandemic, and I had a old One Trick Ponies song called All Alone Together, which is title track of their second CD, and it seemed to, we recorded it in 1996, and pandemic hit, and you're like, oh, this song has more meaning now, it seems, And so,
truly,
Jeff, he met me. We lived pretty close together. He met me in this field, and he had his Jeep, which was like a pickup Jeep or whatever the heck he had. He said, bring a guitar, and he goes, just, meet me. And then I go, well, I only have, a half hour. He says, it'll take 15 minutes. And it was the funniest thing, because it literally took 15 minutes. He shot this, shot that, do this, do that, do that. Okay, good. And I'm like, we're done?
Have a nice night.
Yeah. And it's a cool little, he does a really good job.
And you had another video for a Christmas single, an original Christmas song, which in my book, hands down, best Christmas song in years from anybody.
Oh, thanks, man.
It was up for a review award this year.
Yeah, and that was with Don Hessel, and that was fun. We were doing, it was for Jeff Hildebrandt was looking. Or, I'm like, hey, he does a Christmas video every year called The Gift, and which is cool. He gets a lot of hits, and it shows a lot of cool parts of Bay City. So it's really cool. They've done 4 of them, and it was funny because he's like, yeah, he goes, if you ever have if you got Christmas theme music, he says, send it my way. And James and I did one song. I can't think of which one we were doing, and we sent it to him. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I need something upbeat, because he does a lot of action in his,
This is the guy that runs through town and.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
you got it. That's exactly
good.
right. Yeah. So, and it's cool because I got to meet the runners, and but it was fun because I sent it to him and he's like, this is too slow and so then it was funny, and I'm like, well, I go, so basically you want a rock Christmas song, and he's like, yeah, and then I'm like, well, how many rock Christmas songs are out there? I'm like, I don't think, and I kind of, and I'm like, he didn't like it. I was a little bit angry. He wants rock. I'm thinking Ramones, I don't know. And that was kind of the vibe of that tune. And 10 minutes later, that's almost what that took, I was
very punk for you.
Yeah.
Very come from that replacement side of Ted, almost like it came over you like a whole other vision.
Yeah.
And the video where you're running, just booking through town in different colors, and it's just a cool video.
So there's a snippet of that in Jeff's previous year video, like maybe 15 seconds of it, and then it was kind of funny because I shared it with Don Hessel, and he's like, "This is awesome! I want to do a full video on just this song," and I'm like, once again, kind of pandemic times. Allowed us to run through empty streets because there was no one out, I guess it was early December last year. So yeah, and it was funny because I've done other video work with Don where he always seems to want me to run on camera, and I'm like, I'm not a runner. So he laughs. He's like, hope you brought your running shoes. No, I didn't. So he did an awesome job with that. He's super creative, and he, and it was pretty cool. That
was an amazing video. I'm glad it came up for an award there. It was well deserved and totally a unique video. And time of year, it's going to be a great Christmas song every year because it's a timely thing, and you can't burn out on that. So
yeah, and I think from playing that last year, I think I had the acquaintance walk up to me and they're like, "Are you still doing that rock thing?"
Welcome back.
There you go. No, I'm doing the jazzy thing. Whatever. I don't know where I'm at. Whatever.
Oh yeah, that's so funny. Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We're really running it here, and we'll have to edit, do our talk about the pictures at another point.
Yeah, no problem.
But we're really,
it was great, Jeff. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you guys.
Dude, your career is just a beautiful star in the sky for Michigan, for our state. Thank you for your artistry, man. Thank you for your friendship.
Yeah.
And we hope when you put something out again in the fall or in the winter or whatever it may be, you'll come back on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you saved all materials from One Trick Pony days and so on? We might have to talk to you about a possible display at the museum.
Yeah, we have some stuff.
All right, that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, we want to try to make that museum display kind of a living thing. It's not you put something up and it's going to be there for 20 years. We'd like to, move
rotate
things around. Yeah, you want to keep it interesting.
One of the unique things when One Trick Pony era was one of our good friends of the band. Everybody in the band is artist Mark Petrowski, and Mark would do our gig poster for the next gig while he was at our gig with a Sharpie.
Oh yeah, those things are great.
And so he would do that, and then almost like the middle of the set, he would go, "Well, here," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I got my poster for the next gig," And so it was, and so I definitely kept that because he just installed.
Mark's art is incredible.
Yeah, so it's I think University of Michigan Hospital
right now. Them love
installation.
And
that's amazing.
Those swirls. Oh.
Yeah, well, that's a way to share that talent. Let other people see it.
Yes,
it's great.
So it was cool, and he's a good friend.
Before we shut the microphones off at the podcast that day, we had a little discussion on the importance of the Americana music movement and how the One Trick Ponies fit in from the mid-'90s to the early aughts, and how everything kind of got to bandwagon on that. We're going to include that clip here at the end. Nobody says, because it was the same time, same years.
Yeah.
And nobody knew. The thing is, you guys weren't on a label or some big internet alternative press. Right. You were here in Michigan.
Or
just north, just a hair north.
Dating the person that booked gigs.
There you go. Or just happened to be.
I'm sorry, ended up marrying.
Or your last name wasn't Tweedy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no. It's funny because reading his book.
Fantastic book, yeah. And it just made sense to me. But it's
kind of weird, too, because it's just like, we were just mashing around on that. And it's kind of funny, too. I'm like, we were just mashing around, too, but we're not Wilco. It's just...
Isn't that weird?
It's cool.
But it is a Midwest sound. And that's what's cool for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and for when you go to do it is that wasn't a Nevada thing. That wasn't a Hawaii thing. That wasn't L.A. and New York.
No.
That was Midwest.
No,
and that was Illinois and Michigan. And it went Yantz, Jill Jack, Wilco, Son Volt, man, or Uncle Tupelo at the time, and that's the extent of that.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, Tom Petty's on it. He's Americana now, because Wildflowers came out right around there.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Black Crowes are Americana because they're putting out the mellower records at that time period. And it was all falling in like a deck of cards,
Yeah.
And but that whole thing happened right in the middle of Bang Your Head and the boy singers and.
Yes.
Wow, what a cool time. So I wanted to really accentuate that because here we are 20 years later.
Yeah.
People need to see that you were part of that scene, whether we were big or not,
Right.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and we will talk to you all soon.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitsch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitsch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to